Hey, everybody, welcome to the Game Junkie Show, episode 19. And my friends and I are going to be talking a little bit about tech today. Now, keep in mind, this is not a buying guide. This is just us having some fun talking about tech because there's a lot of new tech out there with consoles and GPUs and TVs and monitors. So we're just going to kind of try to cover some of those buzzwords and have a little fun and talk about the tech. So joining me tonight, we have Lena back for the second time. Welcome back.
Hi.
We have Joey, who's also back, second time guest.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Again.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I love new blood. I love first time guests. We have Jonas, aka the German Kratos.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. I actually, if you could just host the show so we can listen to your voice the rest of the night, I think that would be a real treat for everyone.
I don't know. The problem is, considering that I'm German and not really that well versed, I don't think I would make a good moderator.
I think you make a wonderful moderator. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. There's a lot of knowledge collectively in the room, speaking mainly for these three and not so much me. Lena, I'm going to start with you, ladies first. Tell us about ray tracing, right? This is a hot term. What exactly is ray tracing?
So most people know it through the lighting techniques that you can see for, like, prime example, Cyberpunk. When, it's basically for, like, the easy way of putting it, it's making light look realistic. Like, how rays, like, go onto an object and then get reflected off of it, and then just, you always have this, like, how do you say that in English? Like this stray lighting around everywhere.
Okay.
And that's just like jumping off of an object, and it's like calculating in real time kind of how the light will fall in this area, certain objects, how it reflects off of that. But it's also possible to have ray traced sounds, which a lot of people don't know. The new Forza has it.
I'm going to ask one question about the visuals, and then let's definitely talk about that ray tracing sound. So you did mention reflection, right? So mirrored effect. Does it have anything to do with like chromatic aberration, where you have, which is a different kind of light reflection? Is that connected to ray tracing, or is that something that's a different type of visual effect?
That's something I'm actually not sure of, but I think it might be something different.
I think so.
Well, I could pretty much say something about that, because it's like chromatic aberration is just like an effect, and ray tracing is definitely able to achieve that effect. But it's just some kind of effect, and ray tracing is the technology.
Okay, that actually makes sense. That's a good way to describe that. So then let's talk again about what audio ray tracing is.
The way I understood it, it was actually with Forza. I think it was Forza. The first time I've heard of it, where I was like, hold up, what's that? Because they were like, yeah, that has ray traced sounds. Because I was like, okay, ray traced what now? It's kind of the same technology. When you produce sound, it also jumps off of walls and back. Like when you have your room is completely empty, it creates an echo, kind of like that. It just calculates how it's gonna sound in a specific environment, and that's basically the same thing as with light, just with sound, because it travels as well.
That's very interesting. So are they necessarily directly connected? Meaning, if you have ray tracing capabilities, you could get the visual improvements in performance plus the audio improvements in performance, essentially?
I think it's based on if the developer puts it in or not.
Okay.
I think it could be put in Forza as well. I don't know if it has it actually. Just know it has ray traced sounds, but not sure about ray traced lights.
Okay, but that makes sense. If what you have has the capability for the ray tracing, then you potentially could have both of those benefits depending on what the developer chooses to implement.
I would say every new game could have it. It's just depending on if they put it in or not.
Got it. Which makes sense. And we're still at we're at the infancy stages of this. People call it next gen. It's kind of current gen, but to some people it might be next gen, because if you don't have it, it's next gen. And then if you do,
I'm always unsure how to call it. Sometimes I call it next gen. Sometimes I call it current gen, because it technically is current gen, but not everyone has it because, well, yeah, that's a different topic. You can't get the consoles really well at the moment, or graphics cards. It's quite insane.
That's the assumption I made too, but we're still pretty much in the infancy stages. So I expect things to expand from here, where things will go greater from here. So then, Jonas, I want to ask you, can you talk just a little bit about some of the major and more popular new GPUs and tell us a little bit about the fundamental differences? So if somebody isn't sure, right? They know that there's an RTX 3080 and a 3090, and they know there's a couple different buzz ones, popular ones. What are the fundamental differences in those?
So yeah, I guess let's start with NVIDIA in that case. NVIDIA started with, since we talked about ray tracing, with including ray tracing, like cores chips that are manufactured specifically for ray tracing. Those were introduced with the 2000 series, so the 2080, 2070, and so on. That was the first generation. And now, last year, they introduced the 30 series, which was the second generation of ray tracing, which achieved a lot higher frames per second while performing ray tracing, I guess. And now I kind of forgot the second half of the question, so I was about to list them. And then what wanted you to know?
Just what are the fundamental differences in them? So if somebody isn't really sure how to determine what are some basic fundamental differences, or what are the really key important things they would need to know if they're trying to decide which one is right for them?
So for NVIDIA in that case, as I said, I talked about the 20 series, the 30 series. They are like separated into series, different generations, so to say. And first of all, you can pretty much just look up what is the current generation, what are the previous generations, and that's pretty much a good point to start, so to say. And then within those series, you have like the 3080, as I said, that's most often considered like the flagship gaming graphics card. So you have like the 80, you have the 70, which is a bit more budget. Kind of like a sweet spot for price and performance. Then there's the 60 series often that releases a bit later, which already released earlier this year for the 30 series, which is really considered for budget gaming. And those are pretty much the three most important cards you have to consider from NVIDIA when it comes to gaming. I mean, there's also more expensive cards, in this case for the 30 series, the 3090. But the prices are ridiculous. I mean, with the current situations, the prices for GPUs are already completely bonkers. But other than that, when considering gaming, you should pretty much just focus on the 80, 70, and 60 series. Then for AMD, it's a bit more complicated. That's why I quickly need to check again how they did it. It's pretty similar to NVIDIA. They also have like series, which is the 6000 series is at least the most the newest one, and then they also pretty much just separate them into like different performance brackets, where you have the 6800, for example, and then you have the 6700 as a step down, 600, and so on. So it's a bit different, the convention, but you just have to understand that the first, like the biggest value is the series, and after that the 700, 600, 800 is again just one part of the series, where then the 800 is again like for the top gaming performance, and then 700 and 600 is pretty similar to NVIDIA.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like primarily the newer tech is mostly, if you're looking for that 4K ray tracing with a higher FPS, you're going to get that in these newer GPUs, but it's really just what meets your budget essentially.
Yeah.
Corey Balrog, if you're watching this, please make Kratos say bonkers in Ragnarok. That was when you said bonkers, we need Kratos to say bonkers in the we demand that. Gamers demand that. So just
bonkers
FYI,
is a good word.
Bonkers is a great word. And when he says it, it's like, you know what? Kratos could say bonkers. I'm digging this.
If you do a Twitter search for my username and the word bonkers, you'll probably get like 400 results. I say bonkers all the time. It's great. Yeah, it's a good word.
Yeah, his voice saying bonkers, it makes.
Well, that's way better than me. Yes.
Yeah, it's true. It's just like I can't ever hear words again now that I've spoken to Jonas. I see. I do want to touch really quickly on the M.2 SSD, which seems to be scaring a lot of people. It's not very scary. It's not literally on the PS5, you pull the plate off. It's a small screwdriver. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. You pop it into place and you screw it back. It's not very hard. It's maybe a 15-minute thing. It's a generation 4, NVMe drive. They're pretty common. You can get a unit and buy an aftermarket heatsink. That's what I did. So if anybody watching wants the details, I have a great article that I can send you. Let me know where you want me to send it. It'll give you a breakdown of what's compatible. Don't be afraid of it. Do you guys have anything that you want to touch on the topic of the M.2 drives or the installation process at all? I know people are freaking out.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing, because I know I've seen the outrage on Twitter. That's why I was laughing. No disrespect to anyone. I totally get it can be intimidating at first if you haven't opened a console ever before, which technically you've never needed to. But what I think people need to get about this is you're not opening your console. It's just this little kind of slot you have to open. You're not building a PC or something. There's just one slot it fits in. You're not opening the case of the console. You don't see any insides. You just plug it in. It's a little bit more complicated than putting in a USB. Imagine putting in a USB and then screwing it down, basically. What is also normal is what I think could intimidate a few people when they see it. When you put the M.2 SSD in, it's like here's the slot, and it's like this in the slot. It is a bit upwards. It's totally normal that it's bending upwards. That's why you have to screw it down in the first place. Yeah. So some people could think they're breaking it because it's bending upwards, but it's supposed to be that way. Yeah.
That's a good tip. I didn't think of mentioning that. I'm one of those people, by the way. My PS5, her name is Big Mama, and I don't want to break her, so I understand people's concerns, which is why we wanted to talk about this. And there's a great article. If anybody needs it, I'll get it to you. Anybody else?
I totally get why people are intimidated. I mean, I can build PCs, so it's not rocket science to me. I'm like, why is everyone freaking out?
Yeah.
But the first time I saw how the M.2 is getting put in, basically, I was like, holy, I'm breaking this. What you have to know about PC parts is you can't break them that easily. I was going on my motherboard and then plugging things out, and I thought I would break it, but they're more durable than they look like. You can don't drop your CPU, but you can literally drop an M.2 and nothing will happen. Also, or you yeet it across the room, then it will probably break, but you shouldn't do that in the first place. But yeah, it's just open it. There's just one slot it fits in. Put a heatsink on or buy one where one is already on, basically. I'm confident there will be guides soon. It's still the beta as we're speaking. So it will get more clear which ones will work, and I'm very confident the SSD manufacturers will also put it in the description. This is compatible with the PS5, so because they want people to buy this. They would be dumb if they wouldn't advertise it.
We do have there is a list already of the compatible ones.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, there was just a few ones that were confirmed, but they made some progress there then. And
this article that I found is really good. I found it after I had Joey and you guys helped me with some of my questions. But this article, for anybody who's curious, it will tell you a list of all the Gen 4 drives that are compatible, the aftermarket heat sinks, because some don't have, like I got the Samsung 980 that you can't get a heat sink on, and it will actually give you the measurements, so you know not all are compatible because of the size. So it will tell you the measurements. So it might sound intimidating, but it's really not.
For some, this might be too complicated, like put a custom heatsink on. That I get that, but there is SSDs with heatsink on already. They're a bit more expensive, as you've said already, when we talked in our chat earlier. Yep. But it works. And what is also important, Linus Tech Tips did a video on that as well. If you put the wrong SSD in, like I'm not talking the wrong type of SSD. You need the what was it? M2 and SATA? No, not SATA.
M.2 Gen 4 is only NVMe.
Yes.
Yeah, NVMe. That's what I mean. The SATA won't fit because the slot is a bit different.
Yep.
And likely could break the slot, but just pay attention that it's the NVMe one. Gen 4 if possible, but Gen 3 also works and doesn't brick your console.
Nope.
No.
Does it brick your console?
Nope.
No,
it has to be.
doesn't brick.
It does have to be 4.
Didn't Linus put in a Gen 3?
No. Currently, Sony did it that way. I mean, it could change at some point, but they are. They really want you to put in a Gen 4 NVMe.
But
if you put in a Gen 3, it won't support it. It will tell you can't use it. If you use a Gen 4, which has a lower speed than they specified, that will work.
Yeah, because the Gen 3, I got that mixed up. I think the Gen 3 is 3,500 megabytes per second, and the Gen 4 are between 5,500 and 7,000. So they did confirm it does have to meet the speed of the internal SSD on a PS5, which is 5,500. So it's that or greater.
I got that mixed up. It was when you put one in that's too slow, it tells you it's too slow. But I think Linus tested Miles Morales, and it worked without like stuttering or anything, or like loading stuff after. But I think they want a bit of a buffer there, so they can like increase it with future games. So probably make sure it's the right speed then.
Yeah, I mean, you could be right there that it's not saying Gen 3 won't work, but Sony does say make it a Gen 4, so that's really up to you guys what you decide to do.
It's about the speed now. I think Linus put one in that was too slow. I got that mixed up with the Gen 3, 4 thing. So he put one in that was too slow. It worked, but he suspects Sony wants this buffer, so they have like more space where they can like create games, so they will work basically.
That makes sense. So just in case anybody got confused, stick to Gen 4. We're using a lot of words, but it's really not that bad. Trust me. Like it's not that bad. I'm not the smartest, and I can figure it out. So Joey, hot burning question that people have, mainly parents. What the heck is the difference between the Series S and the Series X if we're looking at resolution and FPS? So what are some basic fundamental differences there?
So the first thing to remember is for a lot of them, there are certain limitations on the S that don't exist on the X, but it's also a lot of it can be down to what the developer does for each individual game. So it's not going to be standard one size fits all. It's the same across all of them. But generally speaking, in terms of resolution, the Series X, that's your big strong one. So you're capable of, some games are up to 4K and up to 120 frames per second, which some games will be 4K 60, some games will be sub 4K. You get the idea. But
is that native 4K 120 on a console or 4K dynamic?
Well, again, that can change.
Gotcha.
Game to game, but there are certainly games, I don't have a list off the top of my head, but there are certainly games that will support native and that kind of thing. So true 4K and 120 frames per second. That's
on a console. On a console, people. Like, on a console, is that not crazy, you guys?
Consoles, that's a lot of fun.
This is where we're at, that consoles can do that.
So your Series S can also support 60 frames per second and up to 120 frames per second. again, game dependent. But it is also capped out at 1440p, which is slightly higher than 1080. And a lot of games are still going to play at 1080, so it's basically the 1440/1080, 60 to 120 FPS, depending on what the developer again wants to do with it individually. But so there's no, and that's for games strictly. I should note, if you are obviously there's no disk drive on the Series S, so you're not going to be putting Blu-rays in it. But if you do have 4K video content on the Series S, it will play in 4K on a 4K television. But games, we're talking about games. I mean,
Sure.
we're talking about games. Games are 1440p and 1080 locked.
Okay, that's fantastic. Jonas, I want to circle back to you. You had talked about some of the main GPUs. Do you happen to know? I mean, obviously, PC hardware is certainly supreme. I mean, the hardware is just so we can assume that we're running at native 4K ray tracing, no problem. Do you happen to know roughly where? And I know that it changes by developer, but roughly what someone can expect to max out on frames per second on some of these models, let's say the 3080 or the 3090?
So when we talk about 4K, native 4K, in that case, you can hope to, and I mean really hope to get native 4K 60 FPS with the 3080. The problem is native 4K is really, really compute intensive for ray tracing. But a great thing, and question I might have for Joey, considering the Xbox later, is NVIDIA has this DLSS technology. I forgot what the abbreviation was for, but pretty much what it does is it takes a lower resolution image and uses AI to upscale it to 4K. And for pretty much anyone without technical knowledge about the technology, you wouldn't see any difference to a native 4K and upscaled 4K. And therefore, if you use DLSS for 4K gameplay, you could, I'm not sure with the 3070, but you will definitely pretty much always, I mean, it always depends on the games and their performance, but you will pretty much always get 4K upscaled at least 60 FPS, probably even higher. And AMD, on the other hand, has this new technology they released a few months ago called Fidelity FX. And in that case, I mean, it pretty much works similarly, upscaling through AI. It's a bit rougher than DLSS, so at least it seems like that. But it works on AMD graphics cards and potentially also on NVIDIA graphics cards because it's open source. And there I was wondering, is the Xbox Series X or S also capable of doing Fidelity FX, doing upscaling to 4K? Do you know that, Joey?
I don't know. I don't know 100% off the top of my head, but I do believe, like, I don't know if the Xbox Series X and S support DLSS at the moment, or if that's coming. I don't know if it's in there now or it's coming.
DLSS won't happen since it's AMD GPUs used in the Xbox, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, that's right.
But Fidelity FX.
I'm not 100% certain. I'm not 100% certain.
Let's take a minute to Google this. Let's Google this.
I just Googled.
Thank you.
Okay. While you were talking, I did that on the
put
side
you on the
here. It gets DLSS from AMD in the future. There was an article from the June 2021 here, and it says, like, from the NVIDIA competitor AMD, it will get the equivalent of DLSS. And to touch on what DLSS means, it means deep learning super sampling. I didn't want to interrupt.
Does PS5 have that? Because I know in Miles Morales,
I'm pretty sure they also have AMD GPUs.
Yeah, it's also AMD.
Yeah, I think it does.
The only current gen console that has NVIDIA GPUs is the Nintendo Switch. And it doesn't support DLSS, not even the new OLED model.
What does Nintendo support?
Yeah.
Highway robbery. But
yeah, I'm sorry, Nintendo lovers, but
sorry.
that shit's not next gen, and it's not going in this episode. But my friends are welcome to
Yeah,
talk about it if they'd
I
like.
It's
Yeah.
just a weak console. Sorry.
No, it is. It truly is. I have one. I play on it. It's cool.
I have
handheld,
one too.
but it's
Do
weak,
I.
and I put it on the dock, and I can't see the shit on the TV. I'm sorry. Like I have to get spectacles on and get like really close to see it. I do also know that we do have games out for the current or next gen consoles that are using machine learning. I know Miles Morales is one, so we do have some pretty cool other advanced things that are happening on these consoles. Anything else that you want to touch on the S versus X difference besides one's a speaker and one's a mini fridge, or did we cover?
I mean, there are other differences. If you only want to stick to resolution and frame rates and that kind of thing, then
Probably, just because I think we want to
That's-
keep this
yeah.
pretty entry level for people who are kind of trying to
Yeah, yeah.
decipher what is all this stuff. And
gotcha. So yeah, on the basis, no, on the basic version, nope, I covered off what I was covered off.
okay, so if anybody out there saying what video game hardware should I get, the answer is all of it. By the way, just get all of them, get everything, like build a PC, get all of it. I want to talk a little bit about the Quest 2. I know that that is 2K per eye for anybody who's curious about that, and it's up to 90 hertz, where the Quest 1, which I have, I believe, is about 70, 75. It is downgraded from an OLED to an LCD, but it is 2K per eye versus a total of 1440, if anybody was curious. Anybody here want to touch on the Quest 2, or would anybody kind of want to touch a little bit on if anybody's possibly interested in the Rift? Is there anything you think we need to discuss on that? Because I mean, we are.
Jonas has a VR headset.
Yeah, I mean, I own a Oculus Rift S. When touching on the Rift, I mean, the Rift is dead. Pretty much, Facebook only will focus on the Quest now, especially because it now supports the ability to just plug in a USB-C cable to your PC, and then you can do the things that the Rift can with the Quest. Otherwise, I mean, you sell your soul to Facebook.
That is true. That is true. It's their requirements are crazy. I didn't realize it when Facebook acquired the Quest. They kind of killed the Rift. That makes me upset.
Wasn't it also like when you have a certain kind of, like when you're not active on Facebook, they delete your account, therefore render your Oculus useless, kind of? Wasn't there something like that?
Well, what happened is a year ago, they pretty much announced that you will have to use a Facebook account to use your Oculus, but you need to have a legit account. And people at that point just created a burner account, and those were pretty quickly banned on Facebook.
Yep.
And then their hardware got also. I don't know if it is completely banned, like the hardware is unusable, or if you could link a new account. I'm not sure, but still, you're locked out of the Oculus.
You can create a new account, but I know it's challenging because you have to contact them and get their approval to transfer stuff, and they're a little bit dealing with tech support with the Oculus, just like with Facebook, is a real pain in the ass. I'm not crazy about the policies. If you're, first of all, it's actually recommended that you don't have one if you're under the age of 13 because it can cause lazy eyes or cross eyes. You're supposed to have your own account. So if you buy this for a 14 or 15-year-old, Facebook is expecting them to be the account holder. But if you're an adult and it's a real legitimate account that belongs to you, that's really you, you won't get a suspension. But like Jonas said, if you make a burner account, then you would risk a suspension there. Instead of getting the Oculus 2, I'm sold on the PSVR 2. I'm not 100% positive, but I do hear that it's going to leverage 3D audio and the haptic feedback with the DualSense, but it's also going to have a motor in the headset. So the haptic feedback you get with the DualSense is going to be correspondent with what's in the motor in the headset, which is pretty cool. And this is the claims, because according to what I did read that Sony said is we're over a year away potentially. They would like to get tracking a little closer to what the Rift does. So unlike the Quest where you have it on buttons, it's more hand tracking. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on the PSVR at all.
I mean, not anything technical, but I want ones. I want one. I'm already sold. Yeah, I'm preemptively. A lot of people aren't really big on it. I'm a believer, man. I'm a VR believer.
I love it.
It has a long way to go. It's in its infancy. There's a lot of work to be done, to be sure. But in terms of, I'm a big fan of immersion. Immersion is one of the escapism is a lot of the reasons why I play games, and there's just a certain there's just something about it that really draws me in. That, and I'm a huge Half-Life fan, and the pinnacle of VR at the moment is an amazing Half-Life game. So yeah.
I love it.
Valve was always good with like kind of showing like the benchmarks of a new technology, kind of. Like they also dabbled in new technology a lot, like this Steam controller, which you can likely consider a failure. But it was new, it was something else. They tried, yeah.
I love how you maintain a level of positivity about stuff that went poorly. Like, it failed, but it's okay. They tried. Like, I like that a lot.
That's the thing about Steam I actually appreciate, kind of. They dare to, like, try stuff out. Like, they scrapped a lot, which is why people are also skeptical about the Steam Deck, which I totally get. But if you look at the index, it's successful. And they made a game for it, which you could consider kind of like a benchmark, like for current VR technology. And yeah, it's great. The Vive brought something new. I would say it brought VR forward, because before it was like kind of a niche market, and obviously there's still a lot to improve on. I am someone who suffers from motion sickness a lot, and yeah, it just needs to be improved there still, which is why I have hope for next gen VR technology. I'm actually pretty interested to hear what Sony's gonna have to say about their new VR headset. I didn't want the last one. I wasn't interested enough in it. Though I would have liked to check out Resident Evil 7 on it because it was exclusive to PSVR.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they have another exclusive deal for this VR stuff, I could see myself probably checking it out like a year or two after it's out.
That's going to be day one for me. I don't play the VR that much, but there's nothing like getting together. Like there's where I live, there's a couple of us there's 3 or 4 of us that have one, and like being in the same room and playing these damn things together, there's something it's like, it's a whole different kind of couch co-op. Like we'll play Vader Immortal at the same time and we're whacking the shit out of each other. Like and we don't even care. Like we're breaking stuff on each other's walls. The cat gets knocked over, speakers are flying, and it's so much fun. Like it's fantastic. Did you guys want to talk before I wanted to go on the next thing? Did you guys want to talk a little bit about the Steam Deck? Is there anything that you feel like we should kind of share with anybody about the tech on that, something that people might need to know?
What I read on it so far is people were skeptical about, oh my god, this button layout is absolutely horrible. Like it was like they compared it to the Switch a lot, which I get because it's kind of the same shape, but it's a chunky boy. Let's put it like that. It's technically a handheld PC. It's not a Switch. It's stronger. The people were also like skeptical about the display resolution. If I could remember correctly, it was 720p. But that is because, which you also won't see, it's a small display. It won't be that like significant. You don't need a 4K OLED in this little thing. Also, it would be more expensive, so that's also something to like save costs on it. If you don't own a PC, this is probably the best entry to PC gaming, I would assume. Also, the handheld aspect is big. It seems to be pretty comfortable, way more comfortable than the Switch. I don't know if anyone of you has the same problem. when you play it with the handheld and it rests on your ankles. Ankles.
What are you doing?
On your wrist, and sometimes it gets a bit numb. I don't know if it's just me.
Yeah. Nope, I've had the same thing happen. I have, yep.
And that gets uncomfy, so I can't play it handheld for long. And with the Steam Deck, it's kind of ergonomic, so it's kind of like rounded, and so it fits better in your hand. And I have hopes that it won't happen with that system. And the way you have to hold it is way different to the Switch, apparently, because you grab it like, as I said, it's more ergonomic. And the buttons seem to feel comfortable, so that is pretty good. Then it seems to reach quite stable FPS with newer games. I think the ones I've seen was Doom Eternal, and I think it had like 70 or 80 FPS. What you have to think about, though, it is a small PC. You will have customizability with the specs and everything. It's just like a small PC. You have the same like settings you can adjust. It's not a console. What my doubts about it are that people who just want to like dabble a bit in PC gaming will be a bit overwhelmed with all the settings you have. And considering that it might age at some point, you won't be able to play everything on ultra settings. I don't think that will be something you can do anyway. So if you buy it, you can't expect to play Cyberpunk on ultra immediately. I could imagine they bring out like some kind of settings for it specifically, so you adjust it for Steam Deck or something. But it is not a console. It will not be buy it and it runs. You will have to adjust settings most likely, and there will be some games you have to play on lower settings.
Okay,
that's something to keep in mind, at least.
No, I think that's good expectations for people to have, especially if they're not really keen on the PC game. But for something portable and at that price point, the performance is quite good. But don't go into it expecting one of these newer. I mean, it's not a next gen console or a next gen computer, but for a handheld, for what it is, I mean,
it is not a high end computer. I think that's something people should like keep in mind. If you buy a PC for like 1.5K, it can compete with the Steam Deck most likely. The Steam Deck is insanely well priced, though. You have to say that, and it will. I'm pretty confident it will run games just fine, especially the new ones too. But you might have to cut off from some settings that you can't play everything on ultra or high settings. So you have to play on medium or low for some games.
It is portable, though. I mean, where else can you? I mean, so that's
you can have PC gaming in bed technically.
Oh, the divorces that would lead to, but like, and maybe the Steam Deck will rest on your ankles comfortably. So we don't know that yet. So then, let me ask you guys this, because some people, whether you play on PC or on consoles, you may have a monitor, you may have a smaller, or you may be somebody like me who says just stick it all in the same room and have a big damn TV and just throw it all in the same place. So there are some differences between monitors and TV, and when we talk about pixel density, I don't know which one of y'all wants to tackle a bit of that topic to kind of teach. Joey's chomping at the bit. Why don't you go first to tell people a little bit about what those fundamental differences are, so if they're not sure what they should be looking at.
There are a few differences. I guess a lot of times people might think that a monitor is just like a really small television. They're all just a screen. You just play games on all of them, so it doesn't make a huge difference. But there are differences, although it's worth noting, worthy point, that not all these differences will matter to everyone, though, right? That's the subjectivity that comes along with some of these things. So, most importantly, like resolution is, of course, your 4K versus your 1080p's and stuff like that. That's the same. That stays the same between monitors, televisions. That's no difference. And same with your response time, your frame rate, whether you're a 60 hertz panel or. Now, with televisions, it's actually more common to get a 120 hertz panel, I think it is, versus 144, which is what you'll typically see on a lot of PC monitors. So the PC monitors do go a little bit higher typically. And there are also things to consider, like the biggest difference typically is things like response time. So like when you're playing a game on a monitor, and for example, you're playing mouse and keyboard, and I press the space bar to jump, and how quickly I see myself jump on the screen. And versus if I do the same thing with plugged into a television, televisions tend to have a higher response time like that. So although some people don't notice it, some people don't, but when you hit the space bar, it actually takes slightly longer to see that character jump on the screen there. And
You said on a TV, correct? So typically,
on a television, it'll take a little bit longer. Now, there are lots of TVs built for like lower response times, lower input latency, and these things. You can get gaming TVs built for this, but if anyone just has a standard run of the mill 8-year-old LCD laying around, and that's what they're using, they may encounter something like that. So if you're like PC monitors just tend to be faster, but pixel density, that's when you talk about your resolution, right? So like it's 1980 or 1920 by 1080 is standard high definition. That is going to look. You have all those, it's about 2 million some odd pixels. I don't know the exact amount. So on a 24-inch screen, you'd have 2 million some odd pixels. On a 28-inch screen, 2 million some odd pixels. On a 65-inch screen, 2 million some odd pixels. So it goes to say this is the same amount of pixels, but the real estate is growing. So that pixel is going to be slightly bigger. The pixels aren't going to be as dense as they are on a smaller screen. So if you ever notice, if you go up to a 55-inch 1080p TV and you get a couple feet away from it instead of several feet back, you'll be able to see the fuzzies. The corners objects might look a little blurry and that kind of thing. But if your phone, your 6-inch phone is 1080p and you look at that from a foot away from your face, videos and content on that seem super, super, super crisp. And it's the exact same pixel count on both devices. But since they're so dense on the phone, it looks nicer. It still looks nice even though when you get close up to it, right? So when it comes to TVs versus monitors tend to be smaller. That's another big thing. I will admit there's nothing like a 70-inch glorious OLED panel in the center of the room. But for some people, if they want a monitor on a desk and they have to sit somewhat closer to it, they can actually still get a pretty sharp experience. Like just right quickly, I think I did some quick math. If you have a 43-inch 4K television, the pixel density on that's about 102 pixels per inch. If you have a 24-inch 1440p monitor, pixel density is about 108. So if you're sitting the appropriate distances from each screen, the 1440p monitor is still going to look amazing, despite the fact it's lower resolution. If you're sitting at the appropriate distance and you've factored in it's a more dense screen, it can still look really, 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 really nice. So sometimes people will always want to go for the big screen, whatever. But if that doesn't work for you, if ergonomically, the space, whatever you have going on, a monitor would be a better solution. They're worth getting. It's not something to shy away from. I guess that's maybe more so my point. Some people might want to try and do that.
Okay, that's interesting. Jonas, I want to ask you, just because I haven't heard that bonkers voice in a while. Do monitors always have a higher pixel density, or like what is the formula that people have to think of if they're saying, I don't know if I should go with a monitor or if I should go with a TV? Should they try to consider the pixel density, or is there like a standard number that typically stays the same within the both of them?
Well, personally, in my opinion, you shouldn't even go for any numbers. First of all, for monitor and TV, I mean, if you're sitting on a desk, it's probably makes more sense to just get a monitor instead of a TV. A TV is more like, I mean, they are developed from different things completely. A monitor is consider to be, okay, you're sitting right next to it, in front of it on a desk, and a TV is for when you sit on a couch a few feet away. And I think that's what you should consider when deciding between a monitor and a TV. And when it comes to resolution and pixel density and all that stuff, I mean, it depends. How much money do you have?
That's great points.
Having the shiny new thing might be great, but I personally, for example, I have a 3080 and it's obviously very much capable of doing 1080p gaming, which I did up until a few weeks ago. And then I upgraded not to a 4K monitor because they are still really expensive, but only to a 1440p monitor. But that's already pretty much enough for me, because even though I'm technically versed, I don't really see those big improvements anymore, as with jumping from 720p to 1080p, for example. And that's something you should also consider when buying a new monitor or a new TV. Look at different resolutions for the same size of the monitor and TV and decide for yourself, do you see the difference? Is it worth it? Because that's pretty much more important than any kind of numbers could ever tell you.
I think that's great advice. I know for me, like I said, I mean, I'm a set it and forget it, like stick it there. And I like to recline on the couch, and I'm a bit away from, so I got a 75, I got a QLED, because that's just where everything's going to run right through. You got all the streaming services, you have everything that's going on there. That does kind of make me want to talk a little bit about OLED to QLED, because I'm a weird like researcher, and I spent so much time, and like I literally showed up at a Best Buy with gaming consoles saying, I would like to plug my system in and test these. Like, that's me. I'm that person who went in. Like, I know the manager there by first name because I'm obsessed with Best Buy, and I'm not even going to lie. Like, they should probably just give me stock with as much money as I spend there. But I went in with systems and said, can I please hook this up and like test this out? So if anybody cares, I'm going to go on a little bit of a nerdgasm here. So, I mean, we're all familiar with light emitting diodes, right? And the OLED is actually organic. So it is emissive, meaning it is what puts out the light, whereas the QLED, which is quantum, is transmissive. So it still relies on an LED that's behind the magical piece that's making the change. If anybody wants to know, I went with the QLED just because you can get them a little more affordably. They are brighter. So if you have a room that you can't get super dark, I prefer that because you'll still get some brightness out of it. And OLED gets a lot darker. And I thought that the view angle was wider, but you do need, like, those darks get fucking dark. So I just getting a room really, really dark. So if anybody's curious, that's the difference on them. And you can I did get a Samsung that has a gaming booster in it, which ups the response time, and it is dope. So if anybody like is in the market, I think it's worth the cost. Did you guys want to touch anything at all on talking about that at all, or are you guys like?
Well, one question I kind of have, because I'm not really that well versed in QLED. Is QLED not pretty much just a further? I mean, LED is already in the name. So is it just like LEDs, but a lot smaller? Is that the only difference?
It's just a different type of diode technology. So OLED, they remade the diodes to be unique. So it's an organic material that, remember plasma TVs, how it was a phosphorus gas and it went pop. There were teeny tiny pockets that made a gas go pop. And that's how you got the color explosion. This is a similar principle, but it's more durable. The QLED, because OLED is proprietary. So Samsung and Sony and these other companies couldn't go out and make an OLED. So they made the QLED, and it still uses traditional LEDs, but they use something in between that changes the transmission of how that then pops. So it's not the same organic material. I'm not exactly sure what it is. They don't tell you because it's proprietary.
See what you're saying.
They made a way to sort of replicate that technology without crossing any boundaries on a trademark. So they kind of think about like changing something midstream, right? So you have like water coming out of a hose and then you do something to drastically change it. That's kind of, but it doesn't get any burn in, and it does last longer, which was another reason that kind of turned me on a bit. And you can get them in gaming versions on both, where you can get boosters on them that help improve the response time. Just for anybody that's curious, and they are all 120.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you think is kind of important that we didn't touch on yet, or is there anything that we talked about but there's something else that you want to bring up about that tech or that buzzword or anything?
I just want to say tube television. They were awesome.
You want to
Because
say
of the
what?
The tube televisions, like the very old ones, like these bricks.
Oh, CRT.
When you cleaned them, then like they crackled. I love that.
Yeah. That's a cathode ray tube TV, and my neighbors still have one because you can't play Duck Hunt without one, because the Duck Hunt relies on the reflection. So they still have one over there, so we can play Duck Hunt.
Oh my god!
Because Duck Hunt won't work on the flat because you don't get that
Mine
reflection.
broke, unfortunately. I had one.
You know, if you take apparently, if you take an NES and you hook it up to play Duck Hunt, and you just put, I guess, the gun up against a light bulb and just pull the trigger, you'll hit the target every single time. I have yet to test that out. I have never tested that out, but that might be a way around the Duck Hunt without a CRT solution.
It could be because it's infrared, so it's like it's a line of sight that bounces back, because the reflective curve is what it bounced back on. So you're replicating that, because a light bulb is it's not flat, right? It has curvature, but it's also a light, and that's how infrared works. So that
maybe
we should try that right now. Like, that's a life hack that we could try.
I don't think that would work, because I mean, there are sometimes two ducks on the screen, and it decides which duck is hit because of the scan line. And that's the important part, because because there are scan lines in those old tubed CRTs or whatever. Those aren't present on LEDs, and those scan lines were important because that way the NES could tell which target you hit. And so a light bulb probably wouldn't work, or would be at least inconsistent.
I was internet duped.
Hold on, wait. I'm gonna see if we can let's see if we can Google this, because using control a lamp. No, that's different. Now I really want to know. Son of a bitch. Well, I can't find it easily, but now I'm going to have to go to the neighbor's house and set shit up, and we're going to have to try it.
Maybe someone later in the comments will know and can tell us.
Yes.
If somebody can tell us, like, is this hack only legit when there's one duck, or is it all bullshit, or like, how does this work? Curious
You'll
minds
get a
need to know.
virtual cookie.
Did the thing that I heard offhandedly like 12 years ago, is that real? Let us know. Let us know if that's real.
Yeah. Well, if you saw it on the internet, Joey, it has to be true.
It has to be true.
Everything on the internet is true, as we know.
True. Full truth.
Yes. Everything, all the blue check marks on Twitter say they're all true. Just like the internet. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on before we wrap up?
The one last thing I will say is only semi-related, but I couldn't escape separating Xbox Series X from the S on a parent's or an uninformed person's behalf without letting them know. We didn't touch on storage, which isn't necessarily related to performance in this case, but the Series X is 1 terabyte worth of storage, and this Series S is 512. But it's worth noting that the operating system takes up like 150 to 200 gigs worth of your storage. So it's, on a Series X, that's okay. You're still rocking like 802 gigs of usable space, I think, is what you're working with. But you have like 364 on a Series S. So if now, and that's unique to each individual, because, and I'm not joking when I say this, I could probably survive on a 300 gig drive, no problem. I play 1 or 2 games at a time, and if I'm not playing, it's deleted. And I have super fast internet and no caps, and it is what it is. I don't mind. So it works for me, but it doesn't work for practically mostly everybody else.
You saying you deleted games gave me anxiety, and I don't even have anxiety. But I also live in like a cow town near the forest where we don't get really good internet. So like no, we wouldn't do that.
Oh yeah, like a 100 gig game. I toss that on, occupy myself for 25 minutes or so. That's done.
You have 1 gig down, 1 gigabyte download.
1.5
Gigabit, not gigabyte.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, gigabit. Yeah, no.
The voice of God came down to correct
Yes.
us.
Oh my God.
Let me smite you for your insolence.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I actually am glad you brought that up. I love Sony. I love my PS5, but I'm not the most thrilled with how Sony handled the whole internal storage thing and how we're kind of doing our own beta testing to an extent. Xbox does have a proprietary external Seagate SSD, plug and play, one size, one model. Yes, there's less options, but it's one size and one model. You plug it, you play it. It's a terabyte a pop, 250. Bada bing, bada boom. So I'm glad that you pointed that out because that's super easy.
The thing is with the I think it both has upsides. How both manufacturers did it. Xbox is hands down, it's user friendlier. It is easier. It's to buy that and plug it in.
Yeah,
it's done. You don't have to open the side panel and screw it open and blah blah. Technically, the PS5 is also not complicated. If you've built IKEA furniture, that's more complicated.
Oh God, I hate IKEA furniture. I'm terrible at it because I look at the directions and I'm like, there's no words and the pictures are so bad. I'm like, okay, sit the screwdriver to your right and the piece of wood to your left and sit on your hands. Like that's what this looks like to me.
Yeah, true.
I'm so terrible at that.
We can say that like putting the SSD into the PS5 is not rocket science, by far not. Everyone can do it. I'm very confident. Even if people are anxious about it, everyone can do it. Once you've seen how it is done, you can do it. But the Xbox is easier. Therefore, PS5 has more options. You can choose what you want to pay. And with Xbox, you have this one thing that they have, and you have that. It's a bit slower, as far as I know, as well.
It is slow. It's 3.5. It's 3.5 versus 5.5 or 7.
Yeah, but let's be real. Most people won't care about that. So yeah,
it's a difference of. I mean, it's not. It's seconds, which is not like. I mean, that's not
still fast.
It's still fast.
Pretty much anybody coming from a mechanical drive, be that on PC or previous gen consoles, and it's an improvement. An SSD is always an improvement.
The last gen was so slow. Like I like when you're PC. I'm playing on PC mostly, and I got this PS4, and I was sitting there waiting, and I was like, when is this loading? And I was like, this takes forever. And with the PS5 that we now got, and it's just a godsend. It's so fast.
Isn't it crazy?
Like, yes.
People were like, there's not enough exclusive games on it. I'm like, do you know how many hours like you'll save just in like load times or fast travel times?
Yeah.
It's insane. It's so fast.
Yep.
And that dual sense, you have to admit that dual sense is fire.
Yeah, it is.
So then I do want to ask you guys one more thing before we close.
Mm-hmm.
To somebody that's watching this that doesn't know a lot about building PC, you're going to pay more money if you buy a PC that's pre-built. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what a lot of people do. I maybe even most PC consumers do that. If somebody is thinking about getting into the space of learning how to build PCs, do you guys have any like reference material, or is there any specific like YouTube channels or any kind of advice that you would give for these people that they can kind of take that interest and run with it?
So generally, I think a lot of people would instantly go and say Linus Tech Tips. If you want to dive into like more tech knowledge, like accumulate that knowledge and stuff like that. But there's also good subreddits, which I have forgotten the name of. But there's also a site where you can like look into builds a bit, do your own build, and I think it tells you
PC part picker.
PC part picker, exactly. Yeah, I was getting to that. You can like put your stuff together, and it tells you if anything is incompatible, basically. So there is stuff that can be incompatible. So if you like try to put a DDR4 RAM into a DDR3 motherboard or something like that, if you can even buy those still, I don't know. But yeah, basically that. So they don't fit it won't work. It's a different like plug thing. But
Plug
yeah,
thing.
it will tell you. Yeah, I can't think of the word right now.
That's like me with everything. Like, how do I in this toilet? There's a plug thing and a floaty thing, and then the flapper moves to the thing.
English words.
Yeah, that's what's
In my
funny.
defense, I'm German.
Yeah, she's sure. I'm just an idiot. That's what's funny. This is actually what's really.
That's not what I said.
I said it. Lena didn't say it. Don't come after Lena. Lena didn't say it. What's funny, I don't know my hesitation with learning how to build PC. I know how to solder. I've built all kinds of shit. I used to build little control panels and pieces that went on arcade games. Once upon a time, I used to actually build dielectric cores for capacitors that NASA used to use on space projects. But like
you can definitely build a PC.
but
Let
that's
me
what's
tell
so
you that.
funny.
It's
That's what's so
literally
funny.
it is a Lego building kit nowadays. It's just
It's much easier now. It's much easier.
yeah. You just there's like small like scribbles on the cables where you have to stick it. It's literally just you Lego pieces. You like put like a tutorial. You put it together. Like this says PCIe. You put it into the PCIe and the motherboard. Basic.
Written instructions, unlike IKEA.
That's right.
I like words. I like words and I like videos. I don't like bad.
There is videos on it, but building a PC is basically a Lego kit by now. It's become so easy. So everyone that's intimidated and thinking about maybe building a PC, it is not that hard as everyone probably wants to tell you. It was way harder back then, but it is pretty easy now.
Awesome.
If there is a good time to get into PC gaming, it is probably now. Wait till the chip shortages are gone though, because the prices
Market sucks.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
yeah, it is hard to get these systems and to get these cards. But what a time to be a game junkie. Am I right? Like,
it's good.
What a time. So then let's do this just for fun to close it out. Why doesn't everybody take a couple minutes and gush about a game that you're just really in love with right now? Whether you're playing it right now or you haven't played it in a while. Lena, I'll start with you. Just take a minute or two and just gush about whatever game you want to gush about.
Okay, so there's so many games. I have recently let's touch about that. I've started Spider-Man Remastered on the PS5. I am very thankful you have the performance mode now, because I tend to get motion sick with 30 FPS that tend to dip because kind of weird. I don't know, just like that. So I'm really happy about that. It looks amazing. It plays amazing. The combat is so fluid. I really love it. It's just, and Spider-Man. I mean, hello. And I'm really enjoying that currently. And I think it's something a lot of like open world developers could touch on, because nothing in the open world you have to do, personally for me, feels boring or tedious. Which I had with a lot of other open world games, where just a side activity at some point felt like a core, basically. It's just like, bleh, I don't want to do this. You know, it's like profiting and gives you XP or something like that, but you didn't feel like doing it. I don't have that with the open world objectives in Spider-Man, which I kind of feel like is also because they tend to pop up every now and then, not all at the same time, and you just have this map and it's packed with objectives, so you can do them all bit by bit, which is what I really like. And I think that that's something more open world developers should include. Like, not everything at once. Do it like in small portions. That's better, in my opinion. It looks amazing.
What I love about both Spider-Man and Miles Morales is something that no open world has been able to do for me before. I do not want to fast travel because how fun it is to traverse. Swinging,
yes, I love it.
It's so dope. Like, why do I want to fast travel? I would rather spend time and just swing and just swag across the city, man.
I think I've fast traveled like twice. So I always swing around. I never use fast travel. I don't want to use it.
word. That's rare. Most open world games can't really say that. Jonas, what about you? Why don't you gush about a game you want to gush about for a moment?
Yakuza Inbound.
How could you tell? Well, yeah, I mean, this year, thanks to Sega finally releasing pretty much the entire Yakuza series on PC, I was able to finally really pick it up and play through the entire thing. I played every single Yakuza game available for PC right now and completed it with all achievements, every single game. Hundreds of hours wasted, some would argue, but it's
Not
really
wasted.
great. and and I don't really want to get too much into detail, just say a few general things about the series. First of all, many people think it's just Japanese GTA. That's so not true. It's something completely different. It's a beat 'em up, first of all, and it's so unbelievably stylish. Everyone should have seen by now a few memes here and there about Yakuza as well, maybe about the karaoke minigame or whatever. But there are so many different fun things you can do that are just silly or so super stylish, and I just love it. It's just the complete package what I could ever have hoped for in a video game.
That is, you're selling it. Tell me about this karaoke mini game.
It's kind of like so it's been introduced in the third part of Yakuza, but it's pretty much a mainstay ever since, and it pretty much just works like Guitar Hero and those kind of rhythm games.
That's kind of cool. All right, so folks out there might be interested in picking up Yakuza. Joey, what about you? I have an idea what you're going to gush about, but like, what are you going to gush about?
I'm still playing the exact same game I've been playing for months. I can't stop playing Sea of Thieves. That's what I'm still playing. Yeah. I've taken a weird turn. I guess we'll talk about that for a second. I've become weirdly obsessed with hunting people lately. Like I get obsessive. I stalk people in the water.
Okay, Boki.
See the big difference is a lot of PvP games I've played growing up and throughout most of my life. I love player versus player, by the way. I love fighting other people. That's my jam. And a lot of the time it has been arena based stuff, whereas a match starts, all my opponents are within X amount of feet away. We're all trapped in this building or this one little map, and we kill each other for a few minutes, and then it's done, and then you move on. But this is the only time where I can just be like, digging up treasure on a beach, and I pull out my spyglass, and I can see that like 10 nautical miles away on a whole other island, just on the horizon, there's another ship, and it's coming right at me. It's like you have like 10 minutes to. Do you run? Do you stay? Do you formulate a ridiculous plan and see if it will work? And sometimes it does. And it's just, I've never experienced anything like it. I'm closing in on 400 hours in. I'm not even close to done. I probably have another 1,000 hours in me. It just, yeah, it's super magic. I have a lot of fun.
I can't see Jonas's face, but I can hear the elation in his voice, and to watch and listen to everyone talk about, like, isn't it just fucking beautiful that games do this to us? Like, it gives us this happiness. Like, it's my favorite form of art. I'm gonna gush about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I think it's a great game. Everybody can play it. I love the Junior Explorer mode. My nephew is very young. He's 4. And I will be able to teach him how to play a game that would normally be very advanced for him with this feature set. So that's a great game if you have, young ones that you want to get them into the basic experience. This offers that. The way they use DualSense support, I mean, half squeezes and full squeezes do completely different things on every single weapon. You can feel the difference. Like, now that I've played it, you could pick a weapon for me, and I could guess what weapon it might be based on the vibration and the way the trigger feels. That's really cool. It's just super cool. It's so crazy. And they have 3 different modes in it. So you have, you can get a 60 and you've got the fidelity mode or ray tracing mode. So I just love the direction that games are going in now with the advancements we have with today's consoles and GPUs. And that's just a really great family game. So thank you guys for being here and for teaching people what they may not have known, or maybe some of you learned a little something.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Us.
Anytime. You guys are always welcome on. I say this like every week. The guests are what make this really, really, really special. Like this
was yet again very fun.
Good. This makes my heart so happy to see people, different people, week after week come on the show, not always have the same opinion, but share that passion. We grow the community, and we're building this really beautiful, positive, just game junkie. We just love games and we love sharing it, and just the guests are just constantly killing it and making the show so fucking amazing every week. I don't think I could ask for anything better. So thank you guys, and thanks everybody for watching. And
thank you.
We will see you guys next week. And in the pinned post below, you can find all these beautiful faces and voices on Twitter in the links below. Thanks everybody. See you next week.